Great. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for the 2026 chair. Commissioner Buck.
I'll move approval of Mayor Van Gordon as chair for the upcoming year for MPC.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and the move has been motion made and it's been seconded. I'm going to do this backwards. Is there any opposition to Mayor Van Gordon? And I'm not seeing any opposition online. Well, congratulations, Mayor Van Gordon. You have the control there for the next 9 months, and I'm finishing my 15-month stint. I will go ahead and do the ceremonial passing of the gavel.
You are a regular professional. You, Councilor Groves. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
No, Chair.
Okay, then the next is business from the audience. So I cannot see what's happening in the online sphere. So if you're wanting to comment to MPC, if you could raise your hand and we will get you promoted.
Thank you, Chair. I'll say that nobody has signed up to speak here in the room. And I do not see anybody online that's not. Well, we have one attendee who is not staff, but we don't have a hand raised.
It looks like it's press.
Councilor Katie says he only has guest credentials. I don't know if you can bring him in as a.
We just changed it.
Oh, you just changed it. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's just been upgraded. Appreciate it.
Oh. Okay, so I think we're good. So we're on to item 6, which is the approval of the February 5th, 2026 MPC minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion before we vote? All right, I'm going to take a page from Councilor Groves here, and if you are opposed, would you please either raise your hand? All right. I think we're good. And we're on to the next item. So it is 7A, the draft 2027-2030 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, LTD project program of projects and air quality conformity determination. I have with you. Welcome, Daniel.
Yes, thank you. My name is Daniel Collister, Senior Planner at the Lane Council of Governments, and this is the draft 2027-2030 Transportation Improvement Program, which includes LTD's 5307 program of projects and the associated air quality conformity determination. Do I need to be closer to the mic? Are people hearing me okay? And people online can hear me just fine?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So the action that's being requested today is to hold a public hearing, but before that, I do want to describe a little bit what these documents are and what they entail. So a Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, is a federally required document of all MPOs. They are required to adopt a TIP at least every 4 years. At Central Lane, we do that every 3 years. Our current TIP, the 24-27 TIP, was adopted by MPC in 2023. It is essentially a list of federally funded projects that will obligate funding over the next 4 years. When people think of the TIP, they are typically thinking of the project list of the TIP, but there are more components to it. For example, it documents the MPO's processes and procedures for a lot of things, but particularly for how we prioritize and select projects for funding. And actually, a lot of the TIP document is documentation of how we're satisfying federal requirements related to the TIP. For example, how the TIP and the projects in the TIP are connected to the regional transportation plan projects and the goals and objectives of that long-range plan. Also, how the federal performance targets are supported by the projects and the investments in the TIP. The TIP has to align with the statewide STIP approval process. And there's, of course, we're subject to the provisions of the Clean Air Act in this area. I'll talk more about that in just a minute. The TIP is also a fiscally constrained document. So it includes not just a list of projects, but how they are funded. There cannot be a project included on that project list that does not have funding that is committed to the project, or at least reasonably anticipated to complete that project. There are 80 projects in all in that TIP document, with a total budget of about $230 million. That includes projects as small as $100,000 equipment purchases and as big as the $35 million Franklin project. I'll come back to the TIP in just a minute. I do want to also mention the TIP does include LTD's Section 5307 program of projects. That is on page 43 of the draft. They're federally funded projects that are going to have funds obligated in the next 4 years, so they're required to be in the TIP. But I mention that specifically because this public process also satisfies FTA's required public process of LTD for the approval of their 5307 program of projects. So I'm just making sure that we're checking those boxes here. This public process satisfies that as well. And those projects are identified on page 43, but they're also incorporated into our greater project list. The other draft document that you have in your packet is the Air Quality Conformity Determination, or AQCD. In this area, because in previous decades there had been air quality violations, mostly caused by wood smoke, we are subject to provisions of the Clean Air Act, meaning that we have to, for our long-range plan and our transportation improvement program, we have to confirm that the projects identified in those plans will not lead to future violations of those clean air standards. Transportation has never been a contributing factor to that. So the emissions of concern in this area is called PM10. It's coarse particulates. That's dust and smoke. As I said, it comes from mostly in this area from wood smoke. Transportation has not been a huge contributor of that. And we have data regularly from LRAPA that provides us with that and confirms that to ensure that we're staying well below those national ambient air quality standards for coarse particulates. But that determination document also involves a project by project review, making sure that there won't be future air quality violations resulting from these projects. 95% of the projects on the list are exempt just categorically because of the nature of the project. Those are safety projects, or they're transit projects, or bike ped or planning projects. When we're talking about conformity, really the projects of concern are those that are adding a new facility or that are adding capacity to the system in some way, particularly for vehicles, for heavy vehicles. We do have 2 or 3 of those projects included in the TIP. In consultation with LRAPA and with state and federal air quality agencies, we've determined that the projects in the STIP conform to the air quality standards. Those few projects that I mentioned will require a closer inspection with those agencies prior to construction, just to better understand what those emissions will look like and make sure that they're not on a scale that's going to be too concerning. So all of that is documented in the air quality conformity determination. But going back to the TIP, I do want to call your attention to 2 things. There are 2 things that are changing in this TIP from the current adopted TIP that are of some substance. I want to make sure that you are aware of those. The first is regarding the priority funding objectives. In the draft, that is near the bottom of page 15, where we talk about that. Those are prior to a funding cycle or a project selection, project solicitation process. We have a staff committee that reviews the 30 or so objectives from the regional transportation plan. and I identify a subset of those objectives to serve as sort of priority funding objectives to steer how this group is directing their discretionary federal funds for transportation projects in this region. The way that that is currently worded, it says that those represent the MPO's priority focus areas when considering funding proposals for the next 4 years. The intention was not that those would expire necessarily, and I'm the person who put that wording in there. I was just thinking of a 4-year tip cycle. The idea was that those would serve indefinitely until they're changed. So the clarifying language has been added in this draft that they serve indefinitely unless otherwise decided by MPC through the appropriate public process. The other change, and the final thing I want to mention, is regarding the MPO approval matrix on page 21 of the draft. So the TIP document is a living document. It's that list of projects contains a lot of information about those projects, and those details have to be kept up to date. So of course, as you're delivering a construction project, your estimates are going to change, your timing is going to change. All those details have to be amended in the TIP so that it is kept up to date. So when you're talking about amending the TIP, there are 2 categories. There are amendments that meet a certain threshold that require federal approval and a public process, and those that don't meet that level. We've described our processes for approving those types of projects here in that matrix that I mentioned on page 21, essentially just explaining or identifying which committee at the MPO has the authority to approve certain types of project changes in the TIP. This committee, the policy committee, really only sees the full approval of the TIP and any changes to procedures or policies in the TIP, and then the initial programming of any of the MPO's discretionary federal funding. Any other changes to projects in the TIP that meet that federal approval threshold can be approved by the Transportation Planning Committee. And anything else, in other words, project or changes to projects that are considered administrative, purely administrative, those can be approved by MPO staff. The way that the current matrix is worded, there is one instance where we do have an administrative adjustment that does not require a public process or federal approval, but according to our matrix, does require Transportation Planning Committee to convene and to act. And the new draft clarifies and corrects that. So if we have an approved project in the TIP currently, that for whatever reason will need to split into 2 projects, which happens occasionally, that as far as the statewide transportation improvement program is concerned, creates another key number. Essentially, it is adding a new project, which by the way things are worded in our TIP now requires TPC approval. That is not something that requires federal approval or a public process, especially if there is no change to funding or scope. So the updated matrix just clarifies that that is something that staff can approve. By doing that, we reduce delays in project delivery. It may take a month or more to have to convene TPC. In the meantime, that project is not moving forward. So this is a good correction, I think. That's really it. I'm happy to answer more questions about the TIP or the AQCD if you have them. Again, the action we're asking for is a public hearing for these new drafts.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Dan, for the presentation. I have a question regarding, and this is probably more for El Rapa, but a question regarding facilities that are in the works to be put in, specifically the e-commerce facility on Highway 99 North near the Eugene Airport. The Eugene City Council has heard quite a bit of testimony from people who are concerned about the added pollution that might be added to air quality as well as transportation. And they keep citing the number of new vehicle transports, both into the facility and out for delivery. But what I haven't been able to find out is, are those numbers, are they a net, meaning we back out the vehicle traffic that's currently occurring, that's delivering packages from another location into our community, or does it just take the gross amount of additional vehicle traffic that might be associated with the facility itself? And also, are they taking into consideration the 30% electric vehicles that the facility be starting out with? I'm just trying to understand the numbers that keep getting reported to us.
Those are great questions, and unfortunately, I don't know a thing about that, but I can follow up with ARAPA.
I think that would be good information to have,
If I can add a little bit to that.
please.
The MPO under our current air quality status is no longer required to do regional analysis.
Okay.
So we don't have to do an analysis of that level of emission detail for the region. It is, as Dan said, up to the jurisdictions for certain projects to conduct an analysis or examine the impacts. So it would be up to Eugene, for instance, to look at the impacts of a project on the federal air quality standards that we're responsible for reporting on. I will say that in the past, and this is many years ago, we at LCOG did used to do the modeling for the air quality on a regional basis. And at that point, in that type of analysis, it would be the net difference.
Okay.
And if that's still the case for this specific project you're talking about, I'm not sure, but that's how it used to be when we did regional analysis.
Well, thank you. I know RAPA has ruled that it wouldn't have a significant impact, but I was just curious what that was based on. So thank you. I'll try and follow up in a different direction.
Okay, anybody else? Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just a statement rather than a question. Just wanted to thank staff for putting out the 5307 list. That goes a long way to helping LTD get the funding for the 5307 grants, as well as getting us squared away for the Federal Transit Administration does a triennial audit of the whole organization. And this also helps keep us in good stead with the federal government.
Thank you. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I was just taking a look through the TIP project list and I noticed there wasn't any listed for the city of Coburg. So I just wanted to confirm that that's really the case and they didn't have anything that needed to be included.
That is right. There are projects for Coburg in the current TIP through 2027. There are not currently any federally funded projects identified in the 2027 to 2030 TIP. And the city of Coburg did not apply for any of the MPO's discretionary federal funding for this cycle.
Okay, anybody else in the on the remote meeting? Well, I don't see anybody. All right, looks like we need to hold a public hearing. I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. Do we have anybody in the room who wants to comment?
No one has signed up, Chair.
And if you are online, can you raise your hand if you would like to comment to the MPC for this matter? Let's see anybody. Do I need to leave this open or is this one I can go into close?
No, you can close the public hearing. The public comment period will remain open until your adoption action at your next meeting.
All right, I'll close the public hearing. And we don't have any other action on this item, so we will, thank you so much, Dan, and we'll move on to the next item. So item 2 is the draft fiscal year 2027 Unified Planning and Work Program addendum with Paul Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. So quick presentation on this. The Unified Planning Work Program is federally required of the MPO to identify the work that will occur in transportation planning and related activities, not only by the MPO, but by the MPO member jurisdictions. The Central Lane MPO adopts a 2-year work program, and a year ago you adopted the work program for both FY26 and FY27. But as part of that process, in the second year, we have to adopt an addendum. The main reason for that is because the federal funding is only approved 1 year at a time. So when we do the 2-year one last year, we could only do FY26 funding. Today's action, or we'll start the process to adopt an addendum for FY 27 so that the second year funding will be approved and any changes to the work program will be approved. The addendum is in your packet, and as I just said, it really identifies just minor changes in timing, wording, scope, other things like that, that are already in the approved UPWP from last year. And it contains the funding table for next year's funding, which in large part is either determined by the federal formulas that pass the money through to the MPO or by your actions earlier that approve the discretionary funding for planning activities. I will say, and I say this every year, that the funding table in the draft in your packet is very draft because we are still waiting on final numbers from the federal government. I received a new set of numbers just yesterday afternoon. We think those might be final, but I'm not sure. So what we're doing is we're telling you, like I do, like I said, every year, that that's a draft set of funding numbers. I don't expect them to change much. Yesterday's numbers actually increased the MPO funding by, I think, about $7,000 overall, which is just a drop in the bucket. We're asking for a public hearing today. The public comment period will remain open until your meeting next month, where we'll ask you to adopt the addendum. That's it.
All right. Are there any questions before I open the public hearing? I don't see any MPC member online raising their hand. All right, I open the public hearing. Do we have anybody in the room?
No one has signed up, Chair.
Okay, and if you're online, can you raise your hand? Okay, we have nobody online wanting to testify either. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and this is no action required, and we're ready for the next item. Look, it's you again, Paul.
It is.
It's the ODA and capital investment priorities.
So Chair, this one I'll give a little bit longer introduction and presentation on. If you recall, 2 months ago at the February meeting, you had ODOT staff here to present on the development of ODOT's new capital investment plan. ODOT is changing how they prioritize capital investments. And instead of taking a 3 to 4 year look through their STIP process every other year, they're now looking at developing a 10-year plan for capital investments. Part of that process involves reaching out to the area commissions on transportation, the Lane Act in our case, and asking for input on the priorities for capital investment on the ODOT system. And as you heard 2 months ago, the act is not only expected to identify priorities, but optionally can identify the top 3 to 5 priorities, prioritize those, and then identify up to 10 more projects. The MPO is a member on the act. I sit on the act on your behalf. All of your jurisdictions also have a seat at the act. But in order to bring the MPO's priorities to the act meeting next week, I need to have you tell me what those priorities are. In your packet is the Transportation Planning Committee staff recommendation for the priorities. And in front of you on the large pieces of paper is the table that I received just yesterday from ODOT staff that is in the act packet for next week that summarizes everything the act will be looking at. And I want to spend a minute going over that table. Page 1 starts with the input of all of the projects, and the green in the very first column, the projects that have the green color coding, the first 4 projects are what ODOT recommended the act consider. The remainder of those projects on the first page in the purplish color coding are projects that were proposed so far by other Lane Act members. And then if you turn to page 2, you will see the 10 projects color coded in blue that are being proposed by us, by you, the MPO. This currently on page 2 reflects exactly what the TPC recommendation is before you for the MPO priorities. I will report at the act meeting next week if you change anything, if you give me any other input that modifies these priorities. But as you can see on page 2, and again, this is in your packet, the TPC staff recommendation is that the first 5 projects are indeed prioritized in that order, 1 through 5. And I have staff here, including myself, who can speak to each project if there's questions. And then the projects 6 through 9, the last 4 projects are considered by the MPO to not be in priority order. Those are sort of the next 4 projects that are of importance, but we haven't placed these as staff in specific order. Now, the new part of this information that was not in your packet, and again, I just received this yesterday, is if you go to page 3, you will see where ODOT staff, for the most part, I believe Bill and Vidal here, put together a recommendation for the act to consider starting next week. As I said, the act is being asked by ODOT to forward the top 5 priorities and up to 10 other projects. So what you see on page 3 is indeed the top 5 priorities would include one of the MPO's priorities, the first priority for the MPO under the recommendation, the Oregon 126B Mill Street to 21st Street project in Springfield. It includes 3 other projects from other ACT members, one in Veneta, one basically from the Lane County jurisdiction, OR 126 East, and one on OR 126 West. And then it includes a project in Oak Ridge for crosswalks. Those are being proposed by ODOT staff as the top ACT priorities. And then the remainder of page 3 and page 4 identifies what the other top 10 priorities that would be forwarded to ODOT would be. You can see in the blue, again, the blue coding in the first column, that several of the MPO draft priorities are there, recommended to be included in the other top 10. A couple of detailed notes on this, and I don't want to make too much out of this, but if you go to page 3, the very first priority under the top 5, OR 126 West, Eugene to Veneta intersection improvements, this is essentially through the Fern Ridge Reservoir area, is an improvement project at 6 intersections. That project actually starts in the MPO. The first intersection is actually in the MPO boundary, and what it does bring into a minor question is whether the MPO should be weighing in on that project as one of our priorities. I've talked to some of this. I've talked to some of the staff in the past 24 hours, and as staff, we're not too concerned that this is a project that barely touches on the MPO. One out of the 6 intersection improvements in this project is in the MPO. The other 5 are outside the MPO. We're not too concerned about it being prioritized within the MPO's list, but that is really up to you. The reason I raise that is because there is an operating agreement between the MPO and the ACT. And what's important to keep in mind, and this has been in place ever since the act is formed, is that once the MPO determines its priorities and sets them in order, the act can't change that. The act has to honor what we submit as our priorities, what you submit as the priorities, and the order you submit those in. So that's one thing to keep in mind with that top project. The other thing to keep in mind is that because ODOT has said to the act, submit your top 5 and up to 10 more. If you go to the bottom of page 4, you will see that there are 2 of the MPO priorities. On the last page, it's really in rows 30 and 31. Again, the 2 that are color-coded blue, Beltline from Roosevelt to West 11th and OR 126 interchange at 42nd Street. Those 2 would not be forwarded to ODOT at this time as priorities. Now, I will say that my understanding, and this could change, my understanding of the ODOT CIP process is that we'll be doing this every 2 years. So this is something where these projects could become a priority later on. I'm going to stop there. We have a lot of information we can help you with, answer questions, but what we're looking for today is direction essentially to me as your representative on the act on what these priorities are and if you support the TPC recommendation.
Councilor Gross.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points I'd like to make, especially in consideration that this plan is now looking at a 10-year window instead of a couple of years. I think it makes this even more relevant. The first is an issue that I bring up frequently, and that's the seismic upgrade of our overpasses, our bridges, and having a secure route of travel, not only to get people to the hospital and evacuate an area, but also to get emergency equipment in. I was speaking with Eugene staff yesterday and we talked about this. And there are ways to get on ground streets around some of the potential failure points that get on either 105 or Beltline that can still get us to the hospital. My point is, having been an emergency responder for almost 37 years, I know that the public rarely responds to emergencies, they react, and they don't always react well under the pressure of a catastrophic condition. Anything we can do to simplify these routes of travel into straight lines helps the outcome of an event. Also, the straighter the line, the easier it is to get emergency equipment in. So we need to be doing a two-way in and out in order for the system to work. I just would like to see something that highlights that as an issue. And I know Vidal's familiar with me bringing this up and actually was gracious enough to set up a meeting for the two of us with the lead engineer for the state, for ODOT. I do appreciate that. So that's one issue. The second issue, I'm disappointed to see that the section of Randy Pape Beltline from Roosevelt to West 11th Avenue has fallen off the list. And the reason I'm concerned about that is it's in a section of Beltline that has single lanes in each direction with a thin dividing line between them. Keep in mind, vehicles are traveling 50, 55 miles an hour and up. So a head-on collision where vehicles are passing within inches of each other, we're talking 100 to 110 miles an hour closure speed. Those are not survivable accidents. And so I was really hoping we'd see, even if we didn't get extra lanes in each direction, at least a divider barrier with Jersey barriers or something that would eliminate or at least reduce the odds of conflict between two opposing vehicles traveling at highway speeds. So again, I just want to go on the record on those two issues. I think they're both important. I'm not saying they're more important than some of the other things, but it should be nice in the next 10 years that we had a plan wrapped around taking those into consideration. And on the seismic issue, how does a journey of 1,000 miles begin? With one step. And if we start making progress towards that goal of having safe, easy to follow, reasonable transportation points with some assurance that they're going to maintain there from a seismic standpoint, I think that's important. And the last point I want to make on that is I know you're putting a lot of effort around Highway 58 because that's how we'll probably get a lot of our supplies into the area. That's good. The problem is they can make it all the way to I-5, and if the Harbor Road overpass collapses, they aren't getting any further north than that. And so, again, we have vulnerabilities that at least we need in the plan to be addressed. And I know Springfield's got some of the same issues going on. I'm not as familiar with those, but I would be supportive of that as well. If the materials and supplies for a large seismic event or any catastrophic emergency come in and we can't get them to where they need to be deployed, they aren't doing us much good. Thank you.
I have another question about the commentary. So is the commentary on the sheet from ODOT or is the commentary from the staff group?
So some of this information was provided to, for the MPO projects only, was provided to the ODOT staff when the TPC made the staff recommendation on these projects. However, ODOT has supplemented that information on the MPO projects. For instance, some of the cost estimate information and a few other things were provided. So it's a mixed, Chair.
So if I'm looking on the back page and I'm looking for the commentary on the, it's on line 31, the 126 at 42nd Street interchange improvements. I guess the part I would want to understand a little bit more is that feels like a safety area as well and not just a freight area. And I don't know if somebody can share some thinking about why it got, because every time I pass that area, I see cars almost up onto 126 from that interchange.
And Chair, I will say that the information under OTC priorities column where it's identified as accessibility, mobility, that would have been ODOT's staff input at this time. So if they want to address that.
Yes, I was primarily involved in, responsible for putting this list together, and some of these comments are mine, especially in the urgency column. You did comment, Mayor, on my comments on the 42nd Street interchange improvement. And this, let me clarify, these comments are for the benefit of the Lane Act, the meeting we'll have next week. These comments may or may not be forwarded to ODOT. So it was really just to assist the Lane Act members in thinking about these projects. This is good feedback today. This list just came out yesterday. Will be a little discussion to this afternoon, perhaps, and we're open to corrections. My comment here about this being primarily a freight access issue or improvement is based on my understanding that there aren't any safety issues at least it's not a top 10 safety concern. There may be some safety concerns there. So I may have missed the mark, and same over here in the OTC priorities. I did indicate accessibility and mobility. I guess we can look at some data. It may warrant including some recognition of a safety concern there. We could add that.
Yeah.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. No, thanks for everything here. I think that first and foremost, part of the reason why the agency did put something together was because this is a starting point of the discussion. This is not cut in stone right now. And that's why we're here today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we're going to be going to the AC next week, I believe it is, to continue that discussion. And again, it's a hard discussion simply because when you try to prioritize something that's obviously in your neighborhood and you're passionate about it and so forth, everybody is trying to figure out how could we take care of our constituents, if you will, to just make sure that happens. And so again, this is a hard discussion. Nothing's cut in stone yet. Again, we're taking that input and based on that input, provide those recommendations to the OTC. And one thing I do want to make clear too, and I think Paul kind of mentioned it, but I want to reiterate this again, the top 5 ones will be prioritized and then sent to the OTC. It's the 10 that's behind there are also going to be sent to the OTC as well. So they're going to be looking at that prioritized 5 plus that 10 that's on there as well. So again, and who makes that final decision? Obviously, it's going to be the OTC, and they're going to be looking at the various conditions, criteria that they have as far as what the agency is trying to prioritize to see that the system that we have is functioning well. I do want to speak a little bit to what I was going to say Chair Groves, but you're no longer Chair. I'm sorry. About the seismic upgrades and so forth, and I feel your disappointment on that too. I think, and this is just a suggestion, a good way to try to approach that is if you can get possibly maybe the TPC or some group to look at all the various bridges that probably need the seismic upgrade that you kind of identify and then prioritize those. And then maybe at the next CIP round, again, we throw those into the mix, in whatever order that is. Because again, we have a process that in some measure, we're building it as we're flying it, but at the same time, we want to account for everything, but it may take time to be able to account for everything the way we would like. It's just a matter of finding a good way to get that into the mix of things. Again, I think finding out which of those projects or bridges, if you will, that would actually be great, that needs to be touched on, regardless of what the condition is, and then have the group prioritize those. And then as we go to the next round, boom, we figure out how we want to place those into this mix so that everyone else could look at. And I want to say too that top 5 that's there, it was a hard decision. Lane County is pretty big. Okay, it's pretty big, and how do you make it right for everyone? That's we're going to be here all day trying to figure that out. But like Councilor Grove said, we don't need to run the full mile. We need to just take at least the first step. And that's going to help us, take things down as we can. And so, and then going back to you, Chair Van Gordon, if there are items in here that we feel that needs to be highlighted more, in particular as it goes to the act itself, let's go ahead and give staff those highlighted items and say, let's include this in this is what my general thought on this, include this into the comment as well, so that everyone at the act can kind of see those highlighted items to help inform their decisions as well. Again, we're only looking at it from one perspective, myself, maybe even Bill or other staff that's at ODOT, but we want to hear what you see, what you feel. And thanks for that input, we can actually go ahead and make that correction / input into here, highlight it, such that as we go to the act itself, they can see that to help inform the decisions that they make.
Could you remind us what it means to be in the top 5 list? So if we follow the whole process, like we pick the 5 perfectly, Atlantic picks the 5 perfectly, OTC says, man, you guys are sharp, that's the 5.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be in the top 5 here?
That means that the top 5 projects have a huge amount of local support behind it. That also means that, hey, these are stuff that, these top 5 here, if we point at Lane County and we look at all of it, in other words, let's say the OTC would have come down here and talked to Councilor Groves by himself, talk to Chair Van Gordon by yourself, those would resonate, you would resonate with them on those. And they know that with some level of assurance that this project, if they had to start selections here in Lane County, more than likely they will start.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Those projects will also be reviewed more closely. There's an ODOT review committee that will look at all these projects submitted by all of the acts. And there are some criteria that have been established and some metrics, crash rates, some other metrics that they'll look at. So they'll actually look at these more carefully than the other 10. So that's a key distinction too. And let me mention, in terms of putting this staff recommendation together, Vidal, Ian, by the way, is online. Ian Roholt, he was involved in this too. It was challenging, as Vidal mentioned, and part of the challenge was ODOT has some criteria, the OTC has established criteria. So we used a lens, we put a couple different hats on. We had to consider what the member governments have on their lists, but we also have to keep in mind what will score well and what will be competitive in terms of the ODOT review committee that will be looking at these. So it was a balancing act. And that's why some projects that are certainly good projects, but they may be expensive or they may not compete well based on our insight as ODOT reps, if that makes sense.
Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Please bear with me. I think I've got 5 or 6 comments here. As Bill mentioned, the top 5 projects will probably be ones that receive more attention as ODOT develops the final and adopts the final capital investment plan. But what I want to add to that is that it's a statewide evaluation. There is no pot of money to Lane County. There is no guarantee we'd even get one of these projects funded. They're really going to be looking at those top 5 more closely, in line or in comparison in the same bucket as projects from throughout the entire state. So in sticking with the ODOT's or the OTC's goals with their weights they have given to safety, for instance, we think that it's important that we stick to those as much as possible because that's the lens they're going to be applying statewide. And that's how we're going to compete as statewide. I think it might be useful based on what I'm hearing today, and I can work with ODOT staff before the ACT meeting, that at least for the MPO projects, we clarify for the ACT if there's any question, which comments, which information on this table is from the MPO and which was added by ODOT. So for instance, if it remains accessibility and mobility on the project that you were asking about, That wasn't MPO input, that was an ODOT determination. But again, you may work with City of Springfield and change that to safety. So we have a week to sort of iron that out. I wanted to also ask today, not only for direction for me to represent you at the ACT, but I am going to ask for your approval for me to draft a letter for Chair Van Gordon to sign and send directly to the Oregon Transportation Commission, conveying the MPO's priorities. Partly because I think it's important for us to have that voice, and partly because I've been in communication with the other 7 MPO managers around the state, and we would like to see the process change a little bit the next time around in 2 years. The MPOs actually have the authority within the metropolitan areas to determine what ODOT projects are priorities. We can actually, I hate to put it this way, but we can actually veto ODOT projects. We can actually make decisions about ODOT projects that are contrary to what ODOT may be determining if they're projects that are going in the STIP, if they're capital projects, which essentially this is what that is. So I think it's important that the MPOs and the other MPO managers feel the same. It's important that the MPOs have a direct voice in this process. That's not happening this time around. Maybe it will next time, but I'm going to ask for you to approve a letter from Chair Van Gordon, at least conveying our priorities this time. 1 or 2 more comments real quick. Counselor, you asked about the Beltline project from Roosevelt to West 11th. So on this list, as I mentioned, the staff recommendation from ODOT has included the top 5 priorities that the TPC recommendation identified. The other 4 MPO priorities were not prioritized by TPC. And 2 of those are on the list of 10 additional projects. They're at the bottom of page 3, the I-5 paving project and the Oregon 99 Beltline to Aubrey Lane project are on the list of 10. Whereas the other 2, the Beltline, Roosevelt, and 126 42nd are not on. You could today take action to say, hey, and I'm really not proposing this, it's up to you if you want to carry it forward, but you could take action today to say, hey, Beltline, Roosevelt to West 11th is our 6th priority, above the other 3. We want it above I-5 paving and or Oregon 99 Beltline, and that would likely move it onto the list of the next 10. So I'll just throw it out there.
All right. Oh, let's go remote and see if we've got anybody that's raised their hand. I do not see anybody. Let's go ahead, Pete.
Thank you. So LTD is actually in favor of the top 5 priorities. They represent either improvements to existing service or potential to add new service that will help our customers.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Close.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion to add the Roosevelt to the Beltline section from Roosevelt Boulevard to West 11th Avenue to at least put a physical barrier between the lanes. I'll also remind everyone that anyone living west of Eugene in Lane County has to travel that route to get, and that's the most logical route to get to the hospitals is Beltline. And a 2-lane road with a head-on collision, it's shut down. There's nothing getting through there. I also had another piece, and often we go back and look at data, numbers. I don't have any data on this. I do know that one of our former mayors of the city of Eugene lost his son, a teenager, to a head-on collision on that section of roadway. And you don't forget those things as a person, a father, or a responder. When you're cutting people out of wrecks, especially when they're deceased, that sticks with you. And I just think that this probably isn't a super high cost that would definitely make that stretch of road safer. Again, you're separated by about this much space with 100 to 110 mile per hour closure between the 2 vehicles traveling at highway speeds. And it's something that's very preventable.
All right, we'll go to Paul in a second. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
before we try to figure out how to navigate this, Paul, can you help us a little bit here with, I think we got two questions, because Councilor Groves described a project that is maybe different than is on this list. And we may need a little help on how to navigate that.
You're asking the same question I was going to ask. I would suggest if you're asking for a separate project and that I'm going to turn to ODOT staff and say, look, do you think that in addition to the project that's already on here for that section of Beltline, which is really a reconstruct and, increase of capacity, probably to 2 lanes in each direction is the presumed project. And given the 28 million, I think it was $28 million cost estimate that's attached to it on this list, it's that level of project. Can we put together a project, an additional project on this list that would be, I think, identified as a safety project for, medium barrier or something along those lines, and a rough cost estimate on that? And to follow up, would you suggest not only adding it to this list, but prioritizing it as number 6 so that it maybe makes it onto the top 10?
Yes, I was thinking adding it as a number 6. I'd be happy with the whole project. I think it makes it safer for a number of reasons. I was just trying to find the cheapest way to get to the safety component of this, which I think is tied to separating vehicles. I also believe in getting people out of roadways because that's how they die.
So, ODOT, you guys want to weigh in here?
Yeah, sure. Did you want to go first? Go ahead.
Chair Van Gordon, Mayor Bell has her hand up.
Thank you. Mayor Bell.
Muted, Mayor Bell. Mayor Bell? You're muted, Mayor Bell. Want to unmute?
Oh, there. Yes, I finally found the button. I apologize for that. I understand what Mr. Groves is saying about the traffic difficulty on that section of roadway. I also don't want to see the paving on I-5 from Mackenzie North dropped down on the list. That is also a very dangerous stretch of highway, and I think there are documented accident reports on that. We certainly see them a lot in Coburg. And this goes back to what Commissioner Buck brought up before, that Coburg does not have projects on this list, but we strongly support that paving of Mackenzie North on I-5.
Thank you, Mayor Bell. So could we go back to ODOT and could you guys give us a little bit of insight to see if you can split this as a project?
Okay, yeah, sure. If I understand, I mean, I'm gonna try to speak from a practical standpoint.
Yeah,
I mean, there's 2 ways to cut it. I mean, sure, you can make a separate project if you think that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Another way you can cut it is if there's already a project on here and you want to just add that scope onto it, such that that scope would actually be part of that, whatever numbers you have. That way you don't have to generate a new number. It'll just be say, hey, included with this scope on this section of road, we also want to put barrier along here to here. And you just would have to add that cost to it. And that would obviously resolve what you're saying, but at the same time, you don't have to fight or debate. I'm sorry for saying it that way. You don't have to debate about adding another number onto it. Bill.
Let me and I want to reinforce what Paul explained earlier. Your list only prioritizes the top 5 projects. There's 4 additional projects that weren't prioritized, weren't ranked. We took that list and Paul did clarify that the top 4 or top 5 were ranked and the others weren't. But we just kept the list in order because there was this agreement Paul referred to and we wanted to respect that list. So it's not that we thought that that project was any less worthy than projects 7, 8, and 9, 6, 7, 8, and 9, but it was on the list. So one simple solution that Paul suggested would be to rank the remaining 4 projects and rank this project higher. And so we could put it higher on the list. Something would have to drop off perhaps. And that project as is, if we widen that from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, it would include a safety barrier. So if you did that, there wouldn't be a need to add another project at all, and it might address your needs.
Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. No, Bill is correct, and I also made it clear that when I transmitted the TPC recommendation to ODOT for putting on this list, that those last 4 were in a bucket, and the random order that I happen to put them in the table is reflected here, but I could have entered them in a different order for that matter. And so the fact that number 6 and 7 are on the top 10 and 8 and 9 aren't may partly be a result of just how I typed them in. So that's why I wanted to ask for you to have more discussion today about those last 4 and the fact that 2 are on the top 10 and 2 aren't. As an aside, I asked Rob Interfield, your Eugene staff a moment ago, if the the Oregon 99 Beltline to Aubrey Lane project slipped off the list so that the Beltline project could make it on the top 10. He said there would be no problem with that. So
So let me tell you what I think you're trying to gently tell us is maybe we all head nod and sort of see if Councilor Groves might be okay withdrawing that motion and instead prioritize the ones that are not prioritized.
that is certainly one approach. If you want to prioritize all 4 of those at the bottom of the list, you can do that. It might be simpler to just say prioritize one of them as number 6 and leave the other 3 unprioritized for the transmission to OTC.
Councilor Buck. Commissioner.
What I'm getting from the conversation is maybe easier and cleaner to consider swapping this particular item with the Aubrey Lane item or another item. Rather than like ranking some, given Mayor Bell's comment. And seems like it swaps like a Eugene project for another Eugene project. If that's something we want to consider.
Thank you, Chair. That would be acceptable to me. I don't know what the data is on the Aubrey Lane section. That would be interesting to know. I doubt we could get that in time for this meeting, but I'm much more familiar with the Roosevelt to West 11th section of Beltline and the problems. I mean, that's a heavy traffic area because there's a lot of people come from west of Eugene and in West Eugene that use that section of roadway to get to other places in town, to get to the hospital, to get to Costco. So I'm happy to withdraw the motion if the second is willing to withdraw as well.
Okay, so I think we've clarified the parliamentary procedure portion of it, that we're going to head nods to withdraw the motion and we can regroup and figure out what to do here.
I'd like to add one comment, then I believe Rob Interfield would like to also. The comparison between Aubrey Lane on Oregon 99 Aubrey Lane versus the Beltline project, if you note the comments from ODOT, I believe, is that the 99 project may be more competitive. And I think that was largely based on the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's a $5 million cost estimate versus Beltline being a $28 million cost estimate. And so part of the reason I was suggesting adding a separate project was to get something that was lower cost. And either we take that approach, or I don't know if the project that's on there on Beltline could be modified to say, the descriptive language could say something along safety improvements up to 2 lanes in each direction, cost estimate, 5 million to 28 million, and give a range on one row. But Rob?
That's where I was going with the motion I made. I was trying to find a cost-effective way to get the safety piece handled.
Hi, Rob Interfeld, City of Eugene staff. The Highway 99 project was more just like we don't have a project there. It's more like we know there's safety issues there and we ought to develop a project. So I think that's further out. Also, the city, working with LTD, are about to kick off a study where we're gonna be looking at all of Highway 99 in Eugene from like I don't know, either Garfield or Roosevelt all the way up to Aubrey Lane. And we will be developing recommendations. So I think that could probably be on a slower track and we could take that one off if people were, or put it at the bottom of the list if MPC members were amenable to that. Looks like Patel.
Go ahead, Vidal.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to remind this group too, I think if we all recall, we did have a smaller project through 99, Theona Drive, I believe it was, where we done some level of mitigation to help that intersection, or at least the intersection in front of the Jerry's, I believe it is, to prevent accidents and so forth. So we've done some work on there. Obviously, there's some more work that probably more than likely needs to be done. But given we haven't heard much problems or issues with that corner, at least for right now, we're thinking that, and again, I'm thinking, just looking at it on the list, it could be passable for now, or at least until we get to a further point where we're seeing some more stuff happening at that intersection. Just a side note for everyone to just remember.
Let me briefly, if I may, ODOT also made some safety improvements further to the north. This is north of Aubrey Lane, but on that stretch between Eugene and Junction City, there are some safety barriers that were installed up there. So we have been paying attention to that corridor. There could be a couple of other intersections that may need some upgrades eventually, but it has gotten some attention.
Okay. So I think it's back to what do we want to do? Do we want to try to craft a smaller project or simply swap? I'm sorry, the line for the Aubrey Lane project. Can you remind us what priority number the Aubrey Lane project is?
It's row 22 at the very bottom of page 3. It's Oregon 99 Beltline to Aubrey. So it's that very bottom, row 22. Currently in the top 10 additional projects. And I would suggest that I'm also hearing the same thing of taking that and putting it in the bottom of the list for projects not forwarded at this time and elevating the Beltline project to the 10 additional projects and perhaps changing the project description and giving a cost range that would at least give an option of it being a lower cost project initially.
That would be great.
Okay, is there any other discussion before we try to form that into some sort of motion? Before we all collectively say yes, what Paul said? I don't see any hands online. All right, I'm gonna entertain a motion and I will accept what Paul said.
Okay, I'll give my my best shot at this. I'll move that we replace the Beltline Road, Roosevelt Boulevard to West 11th Avenue. And we replace that, or we move that into the position of the Oregon Highway 99 Beltline to Aubrey Lane Safety Improvements Project. Did that cover it? Oh, up to 4 lanes. The main focus being the safety barriers.
All right, is there a second?
I would second with do you want to do the cost differential between 5 and 28?
Yes, thank you. Except the friendly.
Yeah.
It needs to have a range. I mean, it's more important that we get something done with those barriers, I think. I mean, 4 lanes would be great, but you know, it's $28 million. I think it might be a bridge too far. Hopefully a seismically stable bridge, but.
All right, is there another discussion? All right, go ahead, Paul.
May I just clarify, rather than 5 million to 28, that we work with ODOT staff, and I don't know if it's 5 million to put barriers in. I don't know if you can come up with a round number in the next week, but whatever the lower cost estimate to higher cost estimate, rather than just sticking with 28 million.
I'm seeing a lot of head nods for that. Go ahead, Vidal.
I just want to add one value that you will achieve here is that scalable projects will score higher.
There you go.
Let me also clarify, all these cost estimates are just order of magnitude, just so we can differentiate a $20 million project from a $5 million project. Some of the cost estimates come out of the TSPs, transportation system plans, and so there was a little more thought given to those cost estimates.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other discussion, so we're gonna proceed to voting. So if you're opposed to this, would you please indicate that? All right, I don't see anybody. All right, then I think we're good. Go ahead, Paul.
So thank you very much for that. I don't feel we're quite done with this.
Well, do we have to still talk about the letter?
Well, the two things.
Okay.
Before we get to the letter, I want to see if there's any other input on the list overall. In other words, again, as your member who's going to be carrying forward your position next week at the ACT meeting, in particular, are you okay with the top 5 priority projects and OR 126 Mill Street, 21st Street in Springfield being, you know, number 4 out of 5? And maybe you don't have enough information to really judge that today, but at least I want to ask the question and allow the opportunity for input on that. If you reach the point in a few minutes where you're good with the rest of the list, then yes, I would like approval of a letter signed by the chair to the OTC.
Okay, so I think way to bring us back on topic to look at the top 5 and make sure we are comfortable with that order, because Paul's gonna relay that to the Lane Act. I'm seeing head nods here. Let's double check. I think maybe next time we do this, I'll sit on the other side of the room. I think we're good. Okay, so now we need to move on to this question of a letter, and in this case, we are going to need a motion to tell Paul to write a letter for me to sign, and I'm impressed with my own thoughtfulness. Councilor Gross.
I'll take a stab at this. I move to ask Paul to write a letter confirming the top 5 priorities on the tip list. CIP, excuse me, the CIP list.
And I would convey all 9 MPO priorities.
Let me start over.
Okay.
I move to ask Paul to write a letter for the chair's signature on the ODOT CIP list, prioritizing all 9 in rank order of priority. That do it?
Almost. I hate to say it.
Third time's the charm.
If I may, I would say that what I would be conveying based on what I've heard today is a letter conveying the 9 MPO priorities, that 1 through 6 are prioritized based on today's discussion, and then the next 3.
What Paul said.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
All right, is it any other discussion for this? Okay, if you are opposed, let's go ahead and raise your hand. And then, all right, I think we're good. Paul, did we get everything you needed out of this item? Oh, we're getting a thumbs up.
Thank you,
Great.
Chair. Yes.
Okay. And we are on to 70 on ODOT update, and then any tip project changes.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll try to be brief. Just 3 items. What's going on with the agency, at least right now. I'm happy to share that, and some of you probably already know this, that at least for the remaining of our biennium, our budget has been balanced, and we are not going to be moving forward with any layoffs, which is a relief for quite a few folks, including myself, to be honest with you. And in case you weren't aware, which I think most of you probably are, in the absence of new revenue from HB 3991, this legislation provides critical short-term solutions to address a significant funding gap. In other words, the legislation that just kind of recently passed during the short term, if you will. And it's SB 1601 redirects $218 million in existing state transportation funds to fill the gap for the state highway fund budget. And then also HB 5204 reduces ODOT's legislative approved budget by $78 million. So we dropped our budget down and then also took some other funds, $218 million, to help fill and bridge the gap. That also being said, I think some of you probably are aware too that the governor just recently, March 19th, I think is when she made the announcement, that she put together a work group to develop a comprehensive transportation package for the 2027 legislative session. And again, she's calling it the Rebuilding Our Transportation Vision Work Group. And they will be developing recommendations to how best to improve and support the transportation services and systems which all Oregonians rely on. And again, that group will be looking at three main tasks. One, analyzing spending needs and trends over the next 10 years for maintenance and operations across all modes of travel. That's both driving, walking, biking, public transit, et cetera, and determine how those trends align with our existing proposed key performance measures. And that's something, again, that's been big conversation topic, monitoring key performance measures that we have on our system and so forth. And then the other thing that the group will be looking at too will be reviewing the current and projected financial condition of major transportation funds, including the Highway Trust Fund, which currently provides equal funding to states and local transportation systems, and statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, which helps to fund public transit across Oregonian. And again, looking at that financial condition that that we have for those different funds and so forth. And the third measure would be to provide a framework for the transportation package that can pass in 2027. So again, they've got a tall order before them, and I'm happy to report that. I do have one other thing that I do want to talk about. I think I was going to give this group a little update on the CIP, but I think the conversation that we just had, awesome. I love it. It's great. It's nice to see that partnership, that coordination, and everyone trying to see what we can do to find the best for our community. And again, for those of you who are here that want to attend that Lane Act meeting, feel free to chime in if you'd like to. Again, I believe it's next Wednesday, starting at 5:30, and it's going to be remote. So if you want the link, chime in to me or Bill, and we can happy to share that with, or actually, Paul is, he's your representative, so he could not only give you the scoop, but also give you the link if you want to watch him in action. So the one thing I do want to also comment on too is we have had a recent project, which is the westbound Springfield Willamette River Bridge project that has been recently completed. And we've been getting a lot of complaints on, let's just say, the rideability of the surface of the bridge there. I think quite a few folks have kind of experienced a little, let's just say, a not so smooth ride. I will say that we are bringing back our contractor to come look at this, but it's going to take just a little bit of time to have them come out and do the repair, if you will. We've estimated that it's more of a, let's just say, a workmanship defect that needs to be corrected. But the correction measure is something that's going to be more involved than what, just go out there and put some patches on there and walk away. We've got one of two choices where we could either do a texturization over the entire surface to help, but in order to do that, you've got to do some infills in certain areas. And then the other option would be to do what we call we call it an MPC or actually a PPC overlay, which is a methacrylate type material that we just coat the entire thing with, and which would help level all the surfaces across it. But both of those processes will take time. The contractor is already aware. They're on board with us, and we're talking with our engineers on which path to take, which one's the best one. And I anticipate, at least talking to my construction manager that it's probably more than likely going to happen more towards the summer, if you will. So if you can please bear with us with the little hiccup right there, we really appreciate it. The fix is just a little bit more than just throwing some patch on there. We've got to do a little bit of design work just to make sure that it's right. So I just wanted to share that with this group, just in case you're getting a few more comments, and then you can tell your folks to reach out to me if they need to. I'm happy to share, walk with them, and talk with what I know and understand as far as that project's concerned. And that's my update for the day.
All right, thank you. Any questions for ODOT? Okay. I don't think we had anything for D2.
Chair, know that information is in your packet every
Yep.
month. If comments, otherwise, nothing further.
All right, any other next steps you want to talk through?
If I could, real quick, a
Sure.
couple of things. First of all, about a week ago, I sent you an email asking you to complete the Title VI demographic survey. We're required to do that to report anonymously on the demographic makeup of the policy board, the staff advisory committee, and the staff of the MPO. If you could click on that link, it's literally 3 questions. It should take you less than a minute to complete. So the Title VI survey, we appreciate that. And then upcoming meetings, I want to note that on May 7th, we will be virtual only. We will be scheduling the adoption of the draft Unified Planning Work Program Addendum you heard about today, scheduling adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program that you heard about today, and then presenting a new draft Title VI plan. And those 3 will happen, maybe more next month. And then June 4th, we plan to be back in person. We will meet tentatively, we're scheduling at the Eugene Library in June. And part of the reason we want to meet in person in June is not just to adopt the Title VI plan, but we're going to have our representatives from your Lane Youth Transportation Advisory Committee come and meet you. I think perhaps 2 or so members, maybe more, will be coming to meet you in person and tell you about the work of your Youth Advisory Committee and hear any input you might have and get to know each other. We're tentatively planning a presentation on the Springfield New Movers Program and how that's been going, the pilot project in Springfield that was funded with MPO funds, and also an overview of the MPO and Transportation Work Program for the next year or so. So we're going to do that in person in June.
Thank you. Anything else? I think we are good. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.